Hi everybody, this video is all about Trifari. They are my absolute most favorite brand of vintage jewelry. I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about the history because I think that stuff is always amazing, and then show you some of my collections, how to date it, and kind of what to look out for, so you can kind of visualize the errors and stuff in your when you're out there looking for jewelry as well. So I'm about to jump into the history of Trifari, and if this isn't something that interests you, please feel free to skip ahead. I have timestamps where there's the identification and dating and other things like that, but here we go. The company was started in 1910 by an Italian immigrant. His name was Gustavo Trifari. He came to America and he was already proficient in the jewelry making industry because he studied under his grandfather in Italy, who was actually a master goldsmith. But when he came here, he didn't want to make fine jewelry because everybody was already doing that. He kind of had this novel idea that he wanted to make this quality jewelry that the everyday woman could afford and wear and feel beautiful. So this actually was a very innovative idea for the time because most of the jewelry then was just for the elite, so you couldn't really afford it. He had his skills in the fine jewelry industry, which takes a lot of craftsmanship. He first started making hair ornaments, which was a very large market in the Edwardian period, which is where he started out at during 1910. He set up a shop in New York City, which was a very metropolitan area, of course, at the time. And he became known for his quality designs and the craftsmanship. So he was creating these amazing pieces, but everybody could afford them. So Gustavo and his uncle parted ways, which gave rise to the partnership between Trifari and Krussman. They joined forces and they started creating these beautiful hair ornaments, and then they branched out into some more high quality costume jewelry. Then in 1925, Fishel came aboard, and together they formed the iconic KTF brand. It was like the stars aligned and this new era of costume jewelry was born. In the 1920s, things were looking up. There was a big uptick in the standard of living. There was new technologies being introduced. People were being able to do a lot more things, and there was a bit of a surplus of income. But then in 1929, the stock market crashed, everything went downhill, the Great Depression ensued, and people had to economize. And economize not just like, oh, I can't buy a new dress. Like, I cannot buy anything except for food, if they can even afford food. There were so many just devastating stories from the time that it was, it's a very sad time in history. But this ideally placed Trifari for the market they were in, because people didn't lose their sense of luxury from the 1920s just because they lost their money. They still wanted those nice things. Just because they couldn't afford them didn't mean they didn't want them. They also made some great marketing moves. They started collaborating with Hollywood and Broadway actors. But Hollywood started becoming a very influential entity at the time, because people didn't have money to go out and do a whole lot of entertaining. They might have a dime or a nickel to go see a movie. and they wanted to lose themselves for a couple hours and see this, like the opulence of Hollywood in the movies. They would see these Hollywood actresses wearing Trifari jewelry. It became of particular interest to the everyday woman. Just like nowadays we look to actresses for their outfits and what's in vogue. So not only was the everyday woman wearing them, high influential people were wearing them. And this, to me, is the dawning of the golden age of costume jewelry. It would be a Greek tragedy if I did not mention right here that the brand hired the renowned designer Alfred Philippe as head of its design team. And he worked for Cartier and I think Van Cleef before he joined Trifari. He just ensured that his designs were always at the forefront of fashion. And some of his most famous pieces was the fruit salad pieces that was mimicking the Tutti Frutti line from Cartier. Also, he pioneered the Trifarium metal movement for the casting metal after World War II. He was the one who started the designs for the jelly bellies. I mean, the invisible settings, the crowns. I mean, you can go on and on. This guy never stopped, and he was just a titan of his time. We have the KTF mark, which is one of the most, well-known of the first early marks. And around 1937, they rebranded, but they changed it to just Trifari to simplify it. They also came up with putting a crown on top of the T. It was called the crowned T. And this was to symbolize that this was a quality, amazing brand, but it was still accessible to the everyday woman, which really came into play during those Depression eras when everybody was broke. During World War II, patriotism was at an all-time high. So jewelry really did reflect this. And we see a lot of that with the embellished patriotic symbols like the eagles, stars, military insignia, and the colorful enamel that went with those pieces in the red, white, and blue. Now, during World War II, the entire jewelry industry faced a lot of challenges, and it was because of the restrictions of the use of metals like brass and tin. So to adapt, they started using sterling silver, and that's why during World War II, during those years, we see most costume jewelry is actually made out of sterling silver. But people still see those designs in that era as costume jewelry, even though it is precious metal. So we've gone from the beginning to the end of World War II, and now everything's about to change again. So stay tuned for part 2.